Right now, there's a trend called the analog movement going viral, and on the surface, it sounds amazing. People are ditching their phones, going back to wholesome and nostalgic hobbies of the past, and saying no to doom scrolling. Or are they?
Out of all the phones that released this year, this one has to be the weirdest.
Lock in and unplug, it's the analog gift guide.
This is my analog bag because cool girls are not doom scrolling in 2026.
Let's go build an analog hobby bag together.
I always think it's so funny when young people make old things new again, or at least they try to. Like, that's just a bag. Like, that's just my tote bag.
Or is this yet another example of a wellness trend that's been hijacked and commodified by capitalism?
Hot take, the analog trend has already turned into an overconsumption, capitalist, fast fashion trend.
Honestly, as a minimalist, I love the intention behind this push towards a more analog lifestyle. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the problem here is that a lot of these so-called analog products are just old-fashioned overconsumption being repackaged and sold to us in disguise.
And admit you're in danger.
Who are you talking to right now?
So in today's video, allow me to de-influence you by sharing 9 analog products that I refuse to buy and that I think you should say no to as well, along with the whys behind the reasoning and a few tips and ideas to make doing so easier for you. Hi there, friend, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marissa, and this is A to Zen Life, and I'm an ex-hoarder turned minimalist who got rid of 90% of my stuff almost 10 years ago. And honestly, this analog trend is giving me a major case of deja vu because I'm watching a ton of people making the same kinds of mistakes that kept my family and me trapped in a cycle of clutter and debt for over 30 years. And trust me when I say, this is not the way.
Hey, hang on!
What was that?
I said don't go that way. Never go that way.
Now, before we dive in, let's quickly touch on what the analog trend actually is in case you've never heard of it. So basically, as people have become more and more burned out by screens and the constant pressure to be online, they're craving a return to slower and more hands-on activities like knitting, scrapbooking, journaling, photography, reading books, and other creative hobbies.
You've probably been seeing analog bags all over your For You page. So have we. We decided to get in on it and make our own. So analog is one of the trends that we put in our 2026 trend report of what digital audiences actually want in 2026. So people are wanting to go back to the basics, proof of reality, connection to spaces, small screen detoxes. For some, it's a return to simpler times. For others, it's an exploration into a lifestyle they never experienced.
And the promise here is that these analog products are the antidote to our screen addiction and comparison fatigue, which honestly isn't necessarily wrong or in and of itself a bad idea. But as so often happens, brands and influencers have taken this concept and oh so helpfully turned it into yet another shopping list. That's honestly more of a band-aid versus an actual antidote, because buying more stuff has never been the cure for a problem that was caused by too much consumption in the first place, both regarding the consumption of digital and social media, as well as the consumption of material goods and possessions, which fills up our homes with a bunch of clutter that overwhelms us and simultaneously drains our bank accounts.
In terms of money, we have no money.
And honestly, I wanted to ignore this trend completely and just wait for it to go away. But my newsfeed would not stop sending me articles and BuzzFeed listicles about this analog trend. And so after getting sick of seeing it popping up in my feed, I was like, you've messed with the wrong minimalist. Challenge accepted. So let's start with the first analog product that I refuse to buy, which is an analog bag. And honestly, when I first saw this one popping up all over the place, I thought it was a joke. Because nothing screams I'm unplugged from social media quite like buying an entire tote bag full of new stuff to share on social media. Am I right? And I think it's more than a little ironic that a movement founded in this desire to get off your phone and slow down has quickly morphed into a performative way to consume even more. While I do see some creators discussing analog bags through the lens of sustainability, a lot of creators that I've seen talking about this online are giving product links to all of the things that they mention in their videos. And one of the things that they'll inevitably link is the bag that they're actually storing all of these analog bag hobbies inside. But if your home is anything like mine and like most people's homes, you don't need to go out and buy a brand new bag just to hold all of these analog hobbies. Just take a look around your home and see what kinds of bags you have lying around that you can repurpose for use for this analog trend.
Don't let the capitalism girls fool you. You've been seeing the analog bag trend and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I should really make one of those. Before you go out and spend money on anything for that damn bag, including the bag, I need you to do something for me. Number one, go dig out the tote bag holding all the other tote bags somewhere in your room. Take one of those bags and now you have a bag for your analog bag.
And it doesn't even need to be a bag per se. It could also be something like a basket or a bin. Any kind of storage container that can hold these items inside and make them easily accessible and perhaps even portable to you if it's something that you want to take out and about with you, can be repurposed as an analog bag. Like I said, we're a minimalist home and we probably own 80 to 90% less stuff than the average person. And even we have a ton of bags and boxes and bins that I could repurpose to use as analog bags. Another analog product I refuse to buy is anything craft or hobby supply related.
Here's everything in my analog bag, aka my activity bag, to keep me from doom scrolling, and it is absolutely working. So I'm currently using a Trader Joe's tote, and I absolutely love it.
I just want to point out here that she has this Trader Joe's mini tote that went viral at the beginning of last year. So obviously this content creator is someone who buys a lot of trends, and I think you'll see that throughout the rest of her video.
Kind of already outgrown it, and I'm trying to keep it as long as possible. So my most recent purchase is this book from Dolly Alderton. I've been wanting to read it for about a year now, and I've already read 4 books this year, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and purchase it. The next thing I actually saw on TikTok, it's called Lifeline's Flow Art. It's basically paint by numbers, but you get these little markers, and it's really cool. They like attach and unattach, but they stay connected. Cool. And I went with the like farmers market, very vibrant colors. This I'm really, really excited about.
So she says she's really excited about that, but it seems like she hasn't actually used it yet. So she purchased it new without ever having done this before for the sole purpose of this analog bag in this video is what it seems like to me. Let's go on and see what else is in the bag.
Everybody on my FYP has been talking about either like bedazzling or needlepoint, and I figured I could go ahead and try both. So I picked up these little rhinestones, and this is going to be for my Galentine's party in a few days. So I actually haven't tried it yet, but why wouldn't I like it? You know what I mean?
So she said that a lot of these things have been popping up on her FYP, which in case you're not familiar means For You page. So these are things that got fed to her on TikTok or wherever she's on social media. They got fed to her by the algorithm. And so I don't think she's ever done these things before. And she just thought that she would try it out of nowhere, which we'll talk about more later, why that might be problematic. But let's continue with a few more things.
And then the one thing I'm very intimidated by is needlepoint. I'm so scared to open these up because I don't want to mess them up. And like, look how cute that is.
Oh my gosh. This is giving me flashbacks to me back when I was in full hoarder mode. Back then, I used to collect hobbies like Pokemon, and I would buy these things, but then never end up using them. And then they just sat there collecting dust in my drawers and cabinets and closets and wherever. I'm going to pause that video there because I think this is actually really important for us to talk about right now. And this is a mindset shift that was an absolute game changer for me in not only helping me save money, but also keep clutter out of my home and feel less overwhelmed with all of the stuff that was on my mental to-do list, like unfinished hobbies that I've never touched, because she's buying all of these things because she hopes hopes to stop doom scrolling and she hopes to have these more analog hobbies and habits. But what I found is actually more helpful is this concept that I'd like to call try before you buy. So instead of going out and buying products to try to implement change and create new habits in your life, it's often way more effective for you to implement the habit before you buy the product. So for example, one of my goals has been to get in shape and be more healthy this year. And I bought a walking pad that I use at my desk, but I was thinking about buying that walking pad for 2 years before I actually pulled the trigger on buying it. And the reason behind that is because I wanted to prove to myself that I could make walking a habit and that that walking pad would actually fit into my life and my routines before I actually purchased it. Most people already have a ton of craft and hobby supplies and unread books and things like that sitting around their house already, which means that they don't need to go out and buy anything new. And let's say that there is a hobby that you want to try, but you don't have the supplies for it. There are always ways for you to try out that hobby without having to spend money on that thing and make sure that you actually like it before you buy a lot of supplies and spend a lot of money on it. The first being is the library, and you can get a ton of hobby supplies at the library. Like our library has telescopes, it has ukuleles, it has all sorts of crafting kits, it has microscopes that my kids loved playing with. And then another thing you can do is join what's called a buy nothing group in your local area. And I guarantee you there are going to be tons of people getting rid of the exact things that you want to try out because they probably made the same mistake of going out and buying these things themselves and then only to realize they didn't have the time for it or it didn't fit their interests or their lifestyle or whatever the case may be. And once you've proven that A, you actually enjoy the hobby, B, you have the time and space for it in your home and life, and C, that you can actually make it a real habit, then you always have the option of going out and investing in nicer tools or more supplies for that thing. And I urge you to be especially cautious when it comes to rebuying supplies for crafts and hobby categories that you've previously already decluttered. You've probably heard of the ghost of Christmas past, and I like to think of these as the ghost of hobbies past. And if you've previously decluttered craft or hobby supplies and are only considering rebuying them again because you're seeing them trending on social media, I think it's really important for you to reflect on the past and why you decluttered those items in the first place before you reintroduce them into your home and life. So please, 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 as we go through the rest of this video and break down some of these other analog products, keep in mind the golden rule of try before you buy and to shop your home first before you actually go out and purchase all of these brand new things. And this try before you buy rule is a great way to break free from that cycle of overconsumption and decluttering that so many people seem to be falling into nowadays. Number 3 on this list is physical planners and journals. And the reason that I refuse to buy these products is because I can look around my home at any given time and find a bunch of them already there. And most of the time, they're practically unused. Okay, so I went on a quick hunt and just within 5 minutes of searching where I keep our school and craft supplies, I found this graphing notebook that is completely unused that could be great for bullet journaling or scrapbooking or something like that. And I found these 3 notebooks that have a few pages ripped out of them and that maybe are not in the best condition, but are still perfectly usable. So all of these are left over from previous school years from my kids. And while I do my absolute best to repurpose notebooks from previous years to New Year's, the colors aren't always the same colors that are requested by their teachers, or maybe they're not the right line size, or maybe they're half used so they don't have quite enough pages. So After repurposing as many of the notebooks as I can, and then buying new ones to fill in the gaps that we didn't have, these are the ones that I have left in our home, which obviously could work perfectly well for any journaling I would want to do. I actually did this exact same thing last year when I was keeping an impulse spending journal to track all of the times I was tempted to buy something that I wasn't planning on and that I didn't necessarily want and need, whether I was at a physical store or scrolling on social media. And I just repurposed an old notebook that my husband had gotten for free from one of the companies that he worked at. So physical journals are something that I haven't paid for in years. And then I love a good planner as much as the next girl, but I always found that whenever I bought a physical planner in the past, I would use it a couple times, and then I just always found myself going back to my digital planning and scheduling system because it was so easy to have all in one place. It's something that I can always take with me, and I'm unlikely to forget it at home because I will never forget my phone, and my phone is where it is. So of course, the most important thing is to find the system that works best for you. And if that happens to be a digital planning system, I don't think you should have to feel guilty about that, nor do I think that it makes sense to own duplicate items that serve the same function. For example, having your phone where you keep some of your appointments and calendars and emails and whatnot. Why would you need to own a second physical planner to serve the same function? But if you're like the me from the past who was constantly buying new planners, hoping they'd fix your productivity, the problem might not be the planner, it might be the system. Number 4 on this list is books and cookbooks. And as someone who loves reading and who loves cookbooks, this took me a while to learn. But nowadays, I almost never buy books or cookbooks anymore without having read and tested them first. Because like the saying goes, I had to learn the hard way that sometimes buying books and reading them are two separate hobbies. And after buying way too many books that I ended up not having time to read or found that I didn't really have the interest in and letting them pile up for too long. Nowadays, anytime there's a book or a cookbook I'm interested in reading, instead of buying it brand new, my first stop is the library where I can borrow books for free to check out. And then if the book is truly life-changing and I want to revisit it again in the future, maybe then I'll consider buying a copy later. I would say 80 to 90% of the time I read a book once and then I find that that's enough for me. But last year during my No Buy Challenge, I found there were 2 books that I not only wanted to read again, but I borrowed several times as physical books. I borrowed them as audiobooks and listened to them on Libby, and I kept going back to them. And so I decided it was worth it for me to get an actual physical copy. So those 2 books were The Serviceberry and The Art of Spending Money, which I've talked about several times on my channel. And then whenever I do want to get a physical copy of a book, I do my best to shop secondhand stores, especially locally, or look online at sites like eBay, which is where I got this one, but I couldn't find this one secondhand, so I ended up getting it from the bookstore. And if I find that I'm only enjoying 1 or 2 recipes out of a particular cookbook, what I'll do is I'll go online and I'll do a quick Google search to see if I can find that exact recipe from that cookbook author, because a lot of these cookbook authors also have blogs and have already published those recipes available for free online. And then I will pin that to my Pinterest board. And even if I can't find that exact recipe by that exact creator, usually I can find something similar enough that I can pin to my Pinterest recipe board to use at a later point. But again, I can't emphasize enough how life-changing it is to have a library card that you can use to borrow things like books and cookbooks from the library and to test drive all of these different kinds of media and hobbies before you actually commit to giving them space in your home and your life. Next up, we have magazines and magazine subscriptions, which I used to be so guilty of wasting a ton of money on back in the day, especially when I was waiting at the checkout counter of the grocery store and I got bored and I started flipping through a magazine and then just impulse bought one on the spot. But then if you think about it, if you do that every single time you're at the grocery store, that ends up being a whole lot of money you're spending on magazines. And just like cookbooks, with magazines, magazines, a lot of times you're only interested in reading an article here or an article there. And then once you're done with that, it's not really something that you want to revisit, and those just end up piling up as clutter. And what's funny about magazines is they're just as full of ads and marketing as all of these social media apps that people are supposedly trying to escape. And again, not to sound like a broken record here, but if there is a magazine that you're interested in keeping up with, you can always check at your local library and see if they have a subscription to that magazine, which they very likely do. And what's more analog than sitting in a quiet library and enjoying that magazine, which you then get to leave behind on the shelf for someone else to enjoy instead of having to own it yourself? And sometimes libraries even carry digital subscriptions of magazines and will give you free access to apps where you can read thousands of them without having to bring a single one into your home. Another analog trend I've seen recently is people buying CDs and DVDs as a way to say no to subscription-based models, but still be able to watch and listen to movies and music that they enjoy. And as someone who grew up in a pre-internet and social media era, I totally understand the appeal and the nostalgia. But for a lot of people, this is just creating a massive amount of physical clutter. Just like with books and cookbooks, my philosophy towards CDs and DVDs is to try before I buy. And all of these things are probably things that you can, again, borrow from your local library and make sure you even like it before you go out and buy it. And even if you do want to buy it, I bet you can find a ton of this stuff at yard sales and estate sales and moving sales and secondhand stores, because there are so many CDs and DVDs that people have already decluttered from their homes because they found owning that much physical media too overwhelming. Borrowing instead of buying is another habit that saved us hundreds of dollars over the past year alone, because as part of my no-buy last year, I canceled a bunch of our streaming services and just borrowed movies from the library. So I like to do a mix of new movies and old movies so that we can enjoy fresh material while also being able to share the movies and stories that I loved when I was growing up with my kids. Here's a new one. Here's an old one. Here's a new one. Here's an old one. Here's a new one. Here's an old one. By the way, I'm always looking for new and exciting movies that I can share with my kids. So please drop me your recommendation down in the comment section below and let me know what family-friendly movie that you would like to recommend. Like, for example, I've never watched The Sound of Music. Can you believe that? So let me know what movies you think we should check out next. Analog product number 7 on this list is old-fashioned cameras. I've been seeing things like disposable cameras and Polaroids popping up all over social media. And yes, photography can be beautiful, but it can also be shockingly expensive, because not only do you have to buy the camera, but then sometimes you also have to buy the film for the camera. And then if it's something like a disposable camera, you have to pay to get the photos processed. And if you take a lot of photos, all of those expenses can add up fast. And also another conversation that I've been seeing around this product is that a lot of people went out and bought these cameras, especially the Polaroid cameras, and then found that they were a bit too heavy and too bulky for them to want to make a habit out of carrying them around place to place and to pull out and use it. And I think for a lot of people, this desire for an old-fashioned camera isn't really about art or photography. It's just about the aesthetics and the optics of being seen with an old-fashioned camera. Meanwhile, the camera in your pocket is incredibly powerful and convenient, and you already own it. So you have to ask yourself, are the aesthetics worth the ongoing expense and the inconvenience of owning these other old-fashioned retro or analog cameras? Another weird trend that I've noticed recently is people buying what looks like landlines that are actually Bluetooth handsets that plug into your smartphone. So again, this isn't a landline that's connected in your house and that requires its own phone number. This is just a specific Bluetooth set that you plug into your actual smartphone so that you can use it to look like a landline. But at the end of the day, it's just another gadget. And if your phone habits need boundaries, the real solution is behavioral, not buying yet another device for yourself. And finally, number 9 on this list is the Kindle or any Kindle-related products and books. I actually used to own a Kindle that was gifted to me by a friend in Germany, but when that Kindle stopped working, I decided that I wasn't going to buy another one because not long after I got that Kindle from my friend, Amazon sneakily changed its terms and conditions to say that when you buy a Kindle book, you don't actually own it. And essentially what you're doing when you buy that book is purchasing a license that can be changed or removed, which means that over time, people can end up spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on books they don't truly own or control. Now, as a minimalist, I don't buy that much, but when I buy something, I want to actually own it. So these days, instead of putting my money into things like Kindle, I would prioritize buying from secondhand bookstores or online resources. The truth is that a slower, simpler, and more analog life usually requires less stuff, not more. And if you're looking for more tips and ideas on de-influencing and how to spend less and save more, be sure and go check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, or I'll see you next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.